I'm glad that everyone's here tonight. I was told that word got out that it was not going to be Mitch, and so I was a little nervous. I was going to be talking to my mom and dad and nobody else. So thank you for showing up. Let's start with a prayer quickly, and then we'll get into the word for a minute. Father, it's a blessing to be able to come back to you, to be able to recenter our lives, to be able to just sit together with friends and with family, to put our heads together, to learn from one another and lean on one another. Lord, I pray that you bless our time as we start tonight, as we try and recenter and refocus. I pray that my words are yours, that the thoughts that are expressed tonight are your thoughts, and I pray that we can truly hear your heart and that we can grow a little bit closer to you. Watch over us tonight. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. As several of you know, and I'm sure maybe more than I quite realize even, I'm in one of those fun stages in life right now where I've got 4 kids at home, and I am learning the lesson that life gets busier and busier. I've heard that all my life growing up. I've always believed it, but now I'm getting to truly learn it and truly understand what it means about how fast time quickly goes. When the opportunity came up to speak tonight, we got together, and several of things, it was kind of bouncing ideas off of one another, and it stemmed from conversations I've had with others over the last several years. I know Darren has some similar thoughts and heartfelt about this, and we just wanted to talk about how do we stay focused in the busy world that we live in. I think we all admit and acknowledge that we live in a busy world, that there's less and less time. Every time we turn around, it seems like another day's gone by. There are more things that we did not get accomplished and more building up on our plate. So how do we stay focused when we live such a busy lifestyle and life seems to be so crazy? I pulled some statistics about how crazy our life really is today, just the world that we live in. From email perspective, every day there are 108 billion emails sent and received around the world every single day. That average is 121 per person. That number is expected to go to 140 in 3 years. If you're not an email person, text messaging. The average person sends between 491 and 3,853 texts every single month. Now that's sent and received, but depending on your age group, depending on your life stage, your familiarity with technology, between 491 and almost 4,000 text messages every single month. Americans spend on average 11 hours a day with some type of electronic media. So whether that's internet, whether it's television, radio, even down to game consoles, smartphones. I don't know if that includes Twitter or not, but 11 plus hours a day with some type of electronic media. And Americans work on average 47 hours a week. 38% of our country works more than 50 hours per week. And if work, email, text, if that's not enough, I did a quick search on an overscheduled child. Are our children busier than they've ever been? Are they participating in more activities? And I found pages and pages of research, pages of arguments and discussions about children being overscheduled. And it struck me a little bit ironic. I didn't spend a lot of time with that, but it struck me a little bit ironic that in all of these discussions, the 2 themes that remained, one, either children are overscheduled and they are too busy, whether it's sports, whether it's music lessons, extracurricular activities, whatever it may be, they are overscheduled. The only other argument was that it's good for them. And I thought it was ironic that nobody is out there saying, our kids aren't too busy. This is all a joke. It tells me that everyone agrees that we're too busy, that we've got too much on our plate. The world is screaming for our attention. My son, we've laughed around the house the last couple of weeks. My son is now walking around quoting commercials to us. He's 5. He walked past the counter the other day. There was a box of OxyClean on the shelf, and he walked past my wife, and he goes, that gets whites whiter. What was that? It's better than Clorox. Who told you that? Lady on TV. Cece's Pizza comes on. Mom, we got to go to Cece's. They've got 2 for $1, and it's the best pizza in town. The world is screaming for our attention in so many different ways. There's actually anxiety if your phone beeps and you don't answer it, that people are having trouble sleeping because their phone buzzes in the middle of the night and it's disturbing their sleep patterns. There's clearly a busy world that we live in. There's something constantly grabbing for our attention. I don't have any answers tonight as to how do we balance that. As Americans, I think we kind of love to teeter right on that edge. Well, how can I manage my emails better? Well, there's an app for that. How can I respond quicker to other people? I've got to get back with these, I can lay in bed at night and I can respond to my work emails, or I can text. I'll text it to someone, and that way I don't have to wait for them to respond. We love to teeter right on that edge of how much can we absolutely handle. I don't want to talk about that at all tonight. What I do want to talk about is what is our actual focus? Forget the busyness of life. What is our focus in life? What are we truly focused on? Over the last several years, there's been a lot of conversation, and I think it has to do obviously with the wars and the conflicts going on. But over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of media attention onto military forces around the world, elite military forces. Now, there have been movies written about them. There have been books written about them. I've read some of these books. I've gone through some of these, and one common theme that always comes up, whether it's a movie, whether it's a documentary, whatever it may be, the one thing about the elite military forces around the world, they have an innate ability to focus extremely well in the worst conditions around. Now, British Special Forces, SAS, there are internet rumors and stories that the British Special Forces, they never train with blanks. They always use live ammunition. And you think about that for a minute and go, that's insane. Well, that's how they maintain their edge. That's how they maintain their focus. They are constantly aware of what their job is. There's even internet rumors that British royalty, that the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, has sat in the middle of these training scenarios. They've sat as a hostage and as a witness while the forces bust in the door shooting live ammo all around them to practice for a hostage situation. It's that intense focus. When I was younger, I had a good friend that was a mentor, and he was telling me this story, and he was teaching me. But he said, when I was younger, my wife and I realized we were falling in love. And he said, I told her one day, I love you. And if that ever changes, I'll tell you. But it probably won't. I probably won't say it again. But I do. I love you, and if it ever changes, I'll tell you. And he went on to tell me that's not a good thing with your wife. When you find someone that you love, you're going to have to tell them more than once. But I wonder, are we not like that a little bit with our faith? Do we sometimes have a relationship with Jesus or with God where we say, God, I love you, and if it ever changes, I'll tell you. But I probably won't bring it up again unless it changes. I think my actions sometimes definitely say that to God. So how do I change what my actions are? I live in this wrestling match where there's constantly something vying for my attention, constantly something vying for my time. How can I gain that elite focus that no matter what, my life is focused on God, that I'm in tune with God? And I've just got a couple of ideas tonight. Darren's going to continue and talk a little bit about how the disciples maintain their focus. These are just a few of my thoughts. There's clearly many, many more than this. But one of the things that came to my mind, Proverbs 8, verses 33 through 36. Listen to my instruction and be wise. Do not ignore it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. For whoever finds me finds life and receives favor from the Lord, but whoever fails to find me harms himself. All who hate me love death. When I read that verse, the one thing that jumped out at me more than anything, and I've grown up hearing Bible verses my whole life, so I get immune to these things sometimes, but the one thing that stood out the most to me at this was the one who's watching daily at my doors, who's waiting at my doorway. There have been a few times in my life, and I can remember specifically when I've learned it. When I was going to someone's house, and when I pulled in the driveway, I didn't see just the house. I didn't see the trees. I saw them sitting on the front porch, waiting for my arrival. And I remember that exact moment, and I remember thinking, wow, I'm really special. And that's what God's telling me. I want you to wait constantly for my arrival. Wait at the doorway, watching for me to come. That's a focus. That's an intensity. Having someone wait on you is incredible. We've constantly got those distractions. So a couple of things. How can we maintain that? How do we learn to wait on God constantly? The number one thing for me, it starts with my mind. It has to start in my head because oftentimes my heart is not there. Romans 8:5 says, those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what that nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. I have to make a mental choice in my mind. Another way that was said in a more worldly term, General Patton once said, if you're going to win any battle, you have to do one thing. You have to make the mind run the body. Never let your body tell your mind what to do because your body is weak and it will always give up. And I think that principle applies to us as Christians. I know for myself, probably far more times than not, it's a mental choice to follow God and not necessarily a heartfelt choice that leads. My mind leads. God works in amazing ways, and as soon as I step out, my heart's there to follow. But to maintain that focus, I have to go back not to what I want to do, not to what my body says, hey, this is great right now, but what my mind is telling me I have to do. I have to lead with my mind. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with ease the race marked out before us." Other verses say, "Let us run in the sunshine, let us run with joy." And I'm being sarcastic there. That's not what the verse says. The verse says, "Let us run with perseverance the race that's marked out before us." There's nothing in that verse that says, when your mind sets to it, it's going to be an easy course. Once you start running, you'll run and feel great. I don't know if there are any runners in the room. I hate it. I know it's good for my body, but there are so many times that the first half mile, the first mile, all I'm thinking is, what am I doing this for? The couch sounds fantastic right now. But I have to run with perseverance. Webster's dictionary defines perseverance as a continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failure, or opposition. I know most of us have faced that failure, have faced that opposition, have faced that difficulty. And sometimes that difficulty can be a good thing. We've got an obligation with our family. We've got an obligation with our work. We're constantly getting bombarded to help other people. But we have to follow and run with perseverance in order to maintain that focus, in order to keep that focus. One of the verses that I decided I wanted my children to learn when they were young, and one of the things that I wanted to guide their lives, is Philippians 4:8-9. It says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." To focus my mind, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think about such things. That's how I start with focusing my mind. The second step for me is put your money where your mouth is. That's a phrase that we don't often hear, and it's a phrase that I associate more with gambling, to be quite honest. You got two guys, whether they're on the basketball court, on the baseball diamond, wherever it may be, get a little competitive with one another. Think you can beat me? All right, put your money where your mouth is. Show me what you got. But I think for us as Christians, for me, that's a tremendous incentive. And I don't mean it from a gambling perspective. In Matthew 6, it says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Further, in verse 24 of Matthew 6, again, it says, "No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." Now, I think that verse talking about money can be applied to so many other things. If you can't love something, you can't serve it. But I've found in life, and many people have told me, that if you really want to be invested in something, reach out towards that something. Put your money where your mouth is. Invest in that something. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time. It can be a shared project. One of the thoughts that came to my mind was watching kids play soccer. When young kids are playing soccer, and this is a life stage for me right now, but when young children are playing soccer, half the time when they score, it's the parents who are more excited than the children are. We scream, we go nuts, we go ballistic because we've been working with them, we've been waiting on them, we've been investing in this activity that we're standing on the sidelines for. If you ever want to know how a math score works or how a test on a math test works, sit down with someone to study, to practice. All of a sudden, I've never thought about math in years, and I want to know, how did she do on that math test? You want to invest in your neighbor? You want to be interested in what's going on in your neighbor's life, in church life? Get involved, get invested. Put your heart, put your money where your mouth is. Put your heart into it first, and you'll find that immediately you're more interested in what's going on with that environment. Starts with our mind. Our heart has to be into it as well. And the third thing, probably the most important in my opinion, on how in the world do we stay focused. We've got so many things clamoring for us. A lot of times Satan wants to tempt us and tell us it's okay to just sit back. You're not quite ready yet. We'll read in a moment how how he called his disciples. And he didn't call them and tell them, "I want you to go and get a master's degree. I want you to start out, well, you really need to be trained as a preacher. You need to be trained in how to convert people. What's your educational background?" He just called them. And so the third step for me is simply get started. There's a phrase, half of the battle is showing up. And I can't quote exactly who it was, but years ago here at a Breakfast of Champions, We had an Olympian athlete who spoke, and he said basically the same thing. He said, half of the battle is getting in the car to go. I find when I don't want to go help, when I don't want to go to church, if I can get in the car, I'll get there. And once I get there, I'll enjoy it, and I'll gain something from it, and I'll bless other people. But if I never get in the car, it'll never happen. Half of that battle is simply starting. You don't have to have the training, you don't have to have the background, you don't have to have the expertise, but it's simply getting involved, stepping up. Jesus told his disciples in Luke 9, 57 through 62, as they were walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He said to another man, follow me. But the man replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Still another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Jesus replied, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom and for the service of God. And I read that sometimes and I think, those are kind of harsh words. And I don't think Jesus meant it harshly. I think what he was simply saying was, don't wait another second. If you want to follow me, if you want your focus to be on me, if you want to live a life of relationship with me, and that's what I want from you. I want you waiting there. I want you waiting on my arrival, yearning for me to be there, longing for me to be there. If that's what you want with me, then don't wait. Let the dead bury their dead. This is my family, God. I just want to go back and say goodbye. Don't go back. Don't put your hand, don't get started constantly looking back at what have we left behind, constantly turning around, waiting. Well, maybe I should get more prepared. I think that's exactly what Satan wants us to do. It starts with our head. We get our heart involved into it, and then immediately we get involved. Don't wait. Now, Darren's going to come up and kind of continue on some of these thoughts, a little bit more how the disciples didn't wait and how they did simply follow.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate your comments, and the songs and the scripture reading perfectly go hand in hand with what we're talking about tonight. One of the things I want to focus on, and you're welcome to turn over there, but it's a very familiar story to us in Matthew chapter 14 about Jesus walking on the water. And it was a great lead-in when Jordan's talking about the disciples. Because in verse 22, it says that Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go before him while he went to pray. So here are the disciples all together, and they head across the sea here. And it goes on after Jesus had been praying for a little while, and a storm has arisen. And that happens in our life all the time, doesn't it? It doesn't take us long to come up with scenarios and all, whether it's work, school, tests that we're doing, whatever it is, there's plenty of storms that arise in our life. But here's a storm out on this water. And then they see a being. They see someone out there, and they're afraid. And it tells us they think it's a ghost at first. And Jesus says, be calm, it's me. And it goes on, and Peter said in verse 28, answered him and said, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he had saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got in the boat, the wind ceased. And those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So beginning of this story, we see the disciples were together. And I think that's one of the key attributes when we're trying to stay focused in a busy world, is that we surround ourselves with people of like faith. You see the youth group, how often we get together, and we're very blessed to be in a congregation like Park Plaza where there's so many activities going on, so many opportunities for us to surround ourselves with people of like faith. But we have a choice in that, don't we? We have the choice to get so involved in whether it's soccer or work or school, all these things that maybe we push away and push aside, and don't take those opportunities to surround ourselves with like-minded faith Christians. We do that, we're going to have strength. And what that does is that builds our faith constantly. And perhaps it pushes us to do some things that are out of our comfort zone. See, you look at this situation with Peter, and he's with the disciples. They get frightened. They see this. I'm sure the waves are still there. The same waves that later on Peter notices. They're there in the beginning, but he's with people of like faith. And I think that helped push him a little bit to say, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to water and deciding I'm going to go walk on, that's a little out of my comfort zone. Sometimes I try to put myself in situations like, what would I do if I was Peter? And I try to imagine that. Now, that's out of a comfort zone. And I've got an amazing wife. Amy is someone who, she pushes me to do things I wouldn't otherwise do. And not just things like put the toilet seat down. I'm talking about things like that really matter in life. We were at Nightlight a couple weeks ago, and it's not just Amy, but it was great because our community groups, sometimes what we decide to do is go to Nightlight and do that. So we're sitting there in that orientation, and they're going through the different ideas, and Amy leans over and whispers, like, we're going to wash feet. What? We're going to wash feet. I'm going, and calls, she raises her hand, yeah, we'll do the feet washing. Out of my comfort zone. But probably one of the best, most humiliating, and I'm not saying that to pat myself, I give God the glory, because it humbled me in a way that I had never been humbled before. And I had heard people say that through Nightlight and all that. It's a great experience, but still out of my comfort zone. But I had someone of like faith and of like mind and other Christians around to give you that courage to do something. What's out of your comfort zone? It might be simple as when you go to a restaurant, praying with your family in public. Sometimes not the easiest thing to do, is it? You might be looking around, what are they going to think? Is that out of your comfort zone? But do you have the faith and the courage? I'm going to do it anyway. Maybe it's a foreign mission trip. Maybe it's all these different things to say, that's not what I would normally do. But when you have people who are going to be there and support you and have that like faith, it's going to push you to do things that maybe are out of your comfort zone. Peter took that step, didn't he? A lot of times we focus on the words, you have little faith, why did you doubt? And we kind of knock Peter for it. I pray one day I'll have enough faith to get to that little amount that Jesus was talking about, because Peter had faith to take that first step. And then it says that Peter came out of the boat and he walked on the water. I don't know how far he got before he got distracted, but he made it a distance. He wasn't so close that he could grab hold of that boat, was he? When he got scared, when it got to the point where he was sinking, he wasn't that close. So he made it a little ways before he got to the point of distraction. He walked on that water. He took those steps, but then he lost focus. Again, putting myself in those shoes, if you will, of Peter. I can imagine myself getting out of the boat, if I had that much faith, taking those steps. Then I start getting the human side of me, the person who begins to get distracted. And I'd probably sit around and think, wow, look at me. Look what I'm doing. There's my first mistake. But then the second thing I'm going to do is a lot of times we want people to see us, don't we? Or we're worried about who's seeing us. Positive or negative, we wonder who is watching in our life, don't we? Just the other day at work, I'm sitting there, I was distracted, I was walking out of my office, had some papers in my hand, I decided to turn around because I changed my mind where I was going. I hit the door jamb, just flat right in the face. First thing I did, who watched? Who saw that? Am I embarrassed? Okay, not many people saw it, actually one or two did. Amy would probably tell you that happens a lot more often than what you'd realize with me and stumbling around. But we're worried about who saw us. If something's great, we're wanting to look around and say, who sees me? Who sees what I'm doing? See, that's me if I'm in Peter's situation. I'm walking on that. Look at me. Hey, wait a minute. The guy's back in the boat. Hey, guys, look at me. Look what I'm doing. Now it's not about Jesus anymore, is it? It's about what I'm doing. It's about my life. It's about my job. It's about the money I'm making. It's about all these things that we're doing in our own life. We've lost focus on Jesus. Now, if you're, we talked about Twitter and all these things, Facebook, all these things. Here I am reading the Bible on an electronic device. It can be good. It can be bad. So say I'm a Snapchat type of person or a Twitter and all that, and I'm walking on the water. Oh, got to get a selfie. Here I am, walking on the water. Let me update my status. Walking on the water to Jesus. Losing focus. It becomes about us when that happens. When it becomes about us, the same thing happens. Just as it did with Peter. He said, saw the winds were boisterous, he was afraid. I have to believe when he got out, he was focused on Jesus. Perfect scripture reading says, don't veer to the left or to the right. Amy thinks that's impossible when I drive. Because I'm looking over here, look at that, stay on the road. Stay on the road when you're focused on Jesus. Because when you look to the left or right, that's when he noticed the waves. There's plenty of problems in our life, and if we want to focus on them, it's not that hard, is it? But if we're focused on Jesus, and we're with people who will help us focus on Jesus, we're not going to as easily veer to the left or to the right. We're not going to start sinking like that. But we all know, as we go through life, that our faith does have ebb and flow to it. We have those times in our life when we're down, when we feel like life is hitting us so hard. Peter did too, didn't he? Peter had that situation where he saw the winds, he saw the waves, and he was frightened, and he started to sink. But what's great about that is when Peter did, what did he do? Where did he turn? Did he sit there and say, hey, I'm a fisherman, I can swim, I can make it. I'm sinking, I'm going to swim back to the boat. No. He immediately said, Lord, save me. Now, I was talking with my girls, got 7-year-old and 8-year-old daughters this week, and I said, girls, we were reading through this, and I said, what do you think Jesus said when Peter said, Lord, save me? Kiana's first reaction was, well, he's probably upset he didn't use his manners. And it's like, well, Kiana, if he's going to sink, you're probably not saying, Lord, if you have time, would you please save me if it's good for you right now? He said, Lord, save me. And the point of that is, it really doesn't matter how we say it, but we know that Jesus is there. We need to know who to go to, who to refocus on. We are going to have those times when we struggle through life. The key with this is that Jesus never went anywhere, did he? Jesus was always there. It was Peter that got distracted. It was Peter that lost focus. In our lives, God isn't going anywhere. He's there constantly for us, waiting on us. What I love about the verse 31, it says, immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him. I'd have to believe when it says immediately, there's just a split second. Jesus was reaching out his hand. We're an instant gratification type of group. We like that word immediately, don't we? We like to hear something that says, hey, he's there. Jesus is always there. Instant gratification, just again, a couple weeks ago, we were making some popcorn, and I'm old enough, and many of you might be old enough, to realize that there wasn't always microwave popcorn. When you made popcorn, you got a pan, turned on the stove, you poured oil into it, you dumped a cup or however much of actual real popcorn into that, and you shook it. And you shook it until it started popping, and so on. So I'm making some popcorn with Erilyn, and Erilyn's sitting there, said, can I do it? Sure. Okay, read the instructions. You put it in there, this side up, for 2 minutes. 30 seconds into it, we're both looking in the window. When's it going to be done? How long do we have to wait for this popcorn? Instant gratification. When you go into McDonald's, how many of us have been in there for 5 minutes thinking, how long does it take to make a Big Mac? It can't be this difficult. We're not happy if our food is taking too long. Immediately, Jesus stretched forth his hand. He's there for us. He's not going anywhere. And when we need him, which is all the time, he's there for us. God is that immovable object that is there for us no matter what little faith we have. He's not losing faith in us if we will turn to him. So no matter what your state in life is tonight, we're all in different states. You might be in a state right now where you haven't come to Jesus. You haven't been baptized. You haven't joined that boat, if you will, of disciples and joined that group of like faith. We have that opportunity tonight. Again, Jesus is there. It says he stretched forth his hand. That hand's outreached, waiting on you to grab it, waiting on me to grab it. Maybe we've been in that boat, but we've lost track. We've gotten distracted by all the things in our life. Work, job, issues with that, school, and all the things that come along with those stresses, peer pressure of what's going on there. No matter what it is in your life, if you've come to a point, just like Peter, where he's walking the right path, he's walking on that water, but yet you're starting to sink. Lord, save me. He's waiting on that. If you're in that situation, or if you're in a great situation, maybe you've bounced back, and it's one of those situations where you just want to praise God for what he's done for you and how he's got you back on the straight and narrow. We're going to go through all those things in our lifetime. He's here for us tonight. Hand outstretched. If there's anybody here who needs the help or the assistance of the church, will you come as we stand and sing the song?
Good job,